6 months. That's all it was supposed to be. 6 months of pretending to be married to Mason Crawford, the most arrogant, insufferable man I'd ever met. 6 months to help him secure his inheritance, while I got enough money to save my family's bakery from bankruptcy. It was supposed to be simple, clean, and temporary. I should have known nothing involving Mason Crawford would ever be simple. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I'm about to tell you the most complicated story of my life. The story of how a fake marriage turned into something so real it terrified me. How one night changed everything, and how the man I thought I knew became someone completely different when he found out I was carrying his child. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how desperate I was to even consider such an insane proposal. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and white and devastating. 30 days to pay the $50,000 we owed in back rent, or Rodriguez Family Bakery, 4 generations of my family's legacy, would be gone forever. I stared at the paper until the words blurred, my hands shaking as I set it down on the flour-dusted counter where my great-grandmother had rolled thousands of empanadas, where my grandmother had perfected her tres leches cake recipe, where my mother had taught me to braid challah bread when I was barely tall enough to reach the work surface. Elena, mija, we'll figure something out, my mother said, but her voice cracked. She'd aged 10 years in the 6 months since Dad's heart attack left us drowning in medical bills. That's when Mason Crawford walked into my life like a hurricane in a 3-piece suit. I was cleaning tables that evening, the closed sign already flipped, when he knocked on the glass door. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it, and green eyes that seemed to see right through you. Everything about him screamed money and privilege. "We're closed," I called out. He held up a business card against the glass. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Rodriguez, that could solve all your financial problems." That should have been my first red flag, but desperation makes you do stupid things. I let him in. "You don't know me," he began, settling into one of our mismatched chairs like he owned the place. "But I know you. Elena Rodriguez, 26. Graduated summa cum laude from business school, but came back to help run the family bakery. No criminal record. No scandalous social media presence. No current romantic entanglements." My blood chilled. Who are you?" "Mason Crawford." He handed me a business card. Crawford Industries. I'd heard of them, a massive conglomerate worth billions. "And I need a wife." I laughed, short and sharp. "Excuse me? Not a real wife. Temporary one. 6 months, to be exact." His green eyes never left mine. "My grandfather's will stipulates that I must be married to inherit control of the company. The board is breathing down my neck, threatening to install my cousin Derek as CEO if I don't comply by my 32nd birthday, which is in 3 weeks. That's medieval. That's rich old men for you." He leaned back, completely at ease while I felt like the world was tilting. "I've done my research, Miss Rodriguez. You're perfect for this arrangement. Educated, presentable, and most importantly, you need money. $50,000, to be exact. The exact amount of our debt." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You're insane. I'm practical. 6 months of marriage, completely platonic. You'll live in my penthouse, separate bedrooms, of course. We'll attend a few public events, make it look convincing. After 6 months, we'll have a quiet divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. You walk away debt-free, and I get my inheritance. And what's to stop you from screwing me over? He pulled out a contract, thick and official-looking. Everything spelled out. $50,000 up front, another $50,000 when the divorce is final. Legal protections for both of us. I stared at the contract, my mind racing. $100,000. Enough to save the bakery and leave us comfortable for years. Need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, find someone else, Stung. He left the contract on the table and walked out, leaving me with the scent of expensive cologne and the weight of an impossible decision. That night, I sat in the kitchen where 4 generations of Rodriguez women had poured their hearts into their recipes, and I made a choice that would change everything. The wedding was a small, sterile affair at City Hall. Mason wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my car, and I wore the only dress I owned that could pass for wedding appropriate, a simple navy blue sheath that belonged to my mother. Do you, Mason Crawford, take Elena Rodriguez to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, businesslike. This was just another transaction to him. Do you, Elena Rodriguez, take Mason Crawford to be your lawfully wedded husband? I hesitated for a fraction of a second, my mother's worried face flashing through my mind. I do. The kiss was brief, perfunctory. His lips were warm but distant, and when he pulled away, his eyes held no emotion whatsoever. Congratulations, the judge said with a smile that felt too bright for the moment. Mason's penthouse was everything I'd expected, sleek, modern, and cold as a museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and everything was white or black or chrome. It looked like no one actually lived there. Your room is down the hall, he said, loosening his tie. There's a study off the living room you can use as office space. The kitchen is fully stocked, though I eat out most nights. What about the public appearances? I'll let you know when something comes up. Otherwise, we stay out of each other's way. The next 3 months passed in a strange sort of limbo. Mason left early for work and came home late, often after I was already asleep. We attended exactly 4 public events: a charity gala, a business dinner, a gallery opening, and his company's annual party. At each one, he played the part of the devoted newlywed perfectly, his hand warm on my back, his smile charming as he introduced me as my wife, Elena. But the moment we were alone, the mask dropped. He was polite but distant, a stranger sharing my living space. I threw myself into helping at the bakery during the day and taking online courses at night, planning for the future when this arrangement would be over. The money had saved us, but I wasn't going to waste this opportunity to better myself. Everything changed on a Thursday night in month 4. I was in the kitchen, stress baking cookies at midnight because I couldn't sleep. When Mason came home, I'd gotten used to hearing his key in the lock, the soft thud of his briefcase hitting the hall table, the whisper of his footsteps on the hardwood. But tonight was different. Tonight. He came into the kitchen. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, and I noticed for the first time how tired he looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was messed up. "Rough day?" He loosened his tie, a gesture I'd seen him make dozens of times, but somehow it seemed more intimate in the warm glow of the kitchen lights. "The board is pushing for a merger I don't want. They think I'm too young to know what's best for the company my grandfather built." "Are you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He looked surprised. "No one's ever asked me that before. Most people probably just agree with whatever you say. Most people want something from me." His green eyes met mine. "You're probably the only person in my life who doesn't." But that wasn't true anymore, was it? Somewhere in the past 4 months, I'd started wanting things I had no right to want. Like the way his eyes crinkled when he actually smiled instead of putting on his public face. Like the sound of his laugh when he forgot to be guarded. Like the way he absently hummed while making coffee in the mornings. "Try one," I said, offering him a cookie instead of voicing any of those dangerous thoughts. He bit into it, and his eyes widened. "God, that's incredible! What's in it?" "Secret family recipe. My great-grandmother brought it from Mexico. Your family recipes. They're like stories, aren't they? Passed down through generations. I nodded, surprised by his insight. Food is memory. Every recipe carries the story of the woman who perfected it. We talked until dawn, sitting at his kitchen island, sharing cookies and stories. He told me about the pressure of living up to his grandfather's legacy, about feeling like he was disappointing everyone no matter what he did. I told him about my dreams of expanding the bakery, maybe even writing a cookbook someday. When the sun started to rise, painting the white kitchen in shades of gold and pink. Mason reached across the counter and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Elena," he said quietly. And something in his voice made my heart skip. That's when we both realized we were in trouble. The kiss happened 3 days later. I was cooking dinner, something I'd started doing more often since our late-night conversation. Mason had been coming home earlier, and we'd fallen into an easy routine of sharing meals and talking about our days. "Smells amazing," he said, appearing in the kitchen still wearing his suit, but with his sleeves rolled up and his tie gone. "It's just pasta," I said, but I was pleased. Cooking for someone who appreciated it felt good in a way I hadn't expected. He moved to stand beside me at the stove, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Need help?" "You could open the wine." As he reached around me for the bottle opener, his chest brushed against my back. I froze, acutely aware of every point of contact, every breath. "Elena." My name sounded different when he said it like that. Rough and uncertain. I turned around, and suddenly we were face to face, mere inches apart. His green eyes searched mine, asking a question I wasn't sure either of us was ready to answer. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. "The worst," he agreed. And then he kissed me. It wasn't like the perfunctory kiss at our wedding. This was heat and hunger and months of suppressed attraction finally breaking free. His hands tangled in my hair, and I gripped his shirt like an anchor in a storm. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, the timer for the pasta chose that moment to go off. "Saved by the bell," Mason said with a shaky laugh, but we both knew something fundamental had shifted between us. The careful boundaries we'd maintained were crumbling, and I wasn't sure either of us wanted to rebuild them. That night, for the first time since our arrangement began, Mason didn't go to his room immediately after dinner. We sat on his impossibly expensive couch, watching a movie neither of us was really paying attention to, hyper-aware of every accidental touch. "Elena," he said during a quiet moment, his voice serious, "I need you to know this wasn't part of my plan." "What wasn't?" "This. Us. The way I feel about you." My heart hammered against my ribs. "How do you feel about me?" He turned to face me fully, his green eyes intense, like I'm falling in love with my fake wife, which is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. "Probably," I agreed, then added quietly, "but not as stupid as falling in love with your fake husband." The second kiss was softer, sweeter, full of promise and possibility. When he carried me to his bedroom that night, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I should have known it couldn't last. For 3 weeks, we existed in a bubble of perfect happiness. Mason would bring me coffee in bed, and I'd wake up to find him watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. We'd cook together, laugh together, talk for hours about everything and nothing. He started coming to the bakery in the afternoons, charming my mother and learning to fold empanadas with my grandmother's patient instruction. Watching him with my family, seeing how naturally he fit into our warm chaos, made me believe that maybe this impossible thing between us could actually work. "You know," my mother said one afternoon, as we watched Mason attempt to pipe frosting with my youngest cousin, "I've never seen you this happy." "Mija." She was right. I'd never been this happy. Mason made me feel cherished in a way I'd never experienced. He listened when I talked about my dreams, encouraged my ambitions, and made me believe I could have everything I wanted. But our arrangement still had an expiration date, and neither of us had been brave enough to talk about what happened when the 6 months were up. The beginning of the end came on a Tuesday morning in month 5. I woke up feeling nauseous, a flu-like queasiness that had me rushing to the bathroom. Mason found me there 20 minutes later, pale and shaky. "Are you okay? Should I call a doctor?" "I'm fine," I said, even though I wasn't sure that was true. Probably just something I ate. But the nausea persisted for 3 days, along with a bone-deep exhaustion that had me falling asleep on the couch every evening. When I realized I was a week late, my blood turned to ice. The pregnancy test stared back at me with 2 unmistakable pink lines. I sat on the bathroom floor for an hour, test in hand, my mind completely blank. This wasn't possible. We'd been careful. Well, mostly careful. There had been that one night when we'd gotten caught up in the moment and forgot about protection until after. "Elena?" Mason's voice came through the door. "You've been in there a while. Everything okay?" "Fine," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just getting ready for work." "Oh!" But I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. I was pregnant with the baby of a man who'd married me as a business arrangement. A man I'd fallen in love with despite every rational thought in my head. A man who would be free to walk away in just 4 weeks. I made it through the day on autopilot, going through the motions at the bakery while my mind raced. How was I going to tell him? How was I going to explain that our temporary arrangement had just become permanently complicated? That evening, Mason made dinner while I sat at the kitchen island, the pregnancy test hidden in my purse like a ticking bomb. "You're quiet tonight," he observed, setting a plate in front of me. "Just tired." He studied my face with those perceptive green eyes. "Are you feeling okay? You've seemed off the past few days." This was my opening. I should tell him, but the words stuck in my throat like concrete. "Mason," I began, then stopped. How do you tell someone their entire life is about to change? How do you tell someone you love that you might have just trapped them in a situation they never wanted? "What is it?" He sat down beside me, his hand covering mine. "The 6 months are almost up," I said instead, taking the coward's way out. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Relief? "They are." "Have you thought about what happens next?" He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on my hand. "Have you?" I asked first. "Elena." He turned to face me fully. "The past few weeks with you have been the best of my life. I know this started as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way it became real for me. You became real for me." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want this to end. I'm saying I want to try to make this real, if you'll have me." Tears sprang to my eyes. This was everything I'd hoped for and everything I was terrified of. "Mason, I love you, Elena, not as my fake wife, but as the woman who makes me laugh, who challenges me, who makes me want to be better than I am." "I love you too," I whispered, the words torn from the depths of my heart. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And I almost told him about the baby. Almost. But something held me back, and some little voice in my head that whispered, "What if he only wants you because it's convenient? What if knowing about the baby changes everything? What if he feels trapped?" So I kissed him back and kept my secret, telling myself I'd find the right moment tomorrow. I'd have known that tomorrow would be too late. Out about Victoria by accident. I was at Mason's office the next day, bringing him lunch because he'd mentioned an important meeting and I wanted to do something nice. His assistant wasn't at her desk, so I walked toward his office, planning to surprise him. That's when I heard her voice through the partially open door. "Oh, Mason, you haven't changed a bit. Still the charming heartbreaker I remember from college." I froze just outside the doorway, something cold settling in my stomach. "Pshaw, Victoria." Mason's voice was warm in a way I'd never heard before. "I can't believe you're back in town. What's it been? 8 years? Too long. Though I hear congratulations are in order. Married, according to the society pages." There was a pause, and I held my breath. "It's complicated," Mason said finally. "Isn't it always with you? Remember when you told me you'd never get married because it was just a business transaction for people like us?" My blood turned to ice. People like us. Rich people. People for whom marriage was a strategic alliance, not a love story. That was a long time ago, Victoria. Was it? Because from what I hear, your grandfather's will required you to be married by 32. Funny how you found someone so quickly after years of avoiding commitment. I couldn't breathe. She knew. Somehow, she knew about our arrangement. I should go, Mason said, but his voice lacked conviction. Should you? We always did have unfinished business, you and I, and if your marriage is just a convenience. I'd heard enough. I backed away from the door on shaking legs, my chest tight with panic and betrayal. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the polished steel doors and saw a fool. A naive little baker who'd actually believed a billionaire could fall in love with her. But it was worse than that, wasn't it? Because now I was carrying his child, and he was already looking for ways out of our arrangement. That night, I lay in bed listening to Mason move around the apartment, waiting for him to come to our room. When he finally did, he seemed distracted, distant. "How was your meeting?" I asked. "Testing." "Fine. Just some old business associates." The lie sat between us like a poisonous snake. If he was lying about Victoria, what else was he lying about? Had any of it been real? Or had I just been a more convenient option than whatever other arrangement he'd been planning? "Elena," he said, settling into bed beside me. "Are you okay? You seemed upset when you got home." "Just tired," I lied, mirroring his deception. He reached for me, and I let him hold me, even as my heart was breaking. His hands were gentle as they traced patterns on my skin. And when he whispered, "I love you," against my hair, I almost believed him. But almost wasn't enough anymore. The next morning, I made a decision that would haunt me for months. I called Dr. Martinez to confirm what I already knew. Then I booked a flight home to San Antonio. I told myself I needed time to think, space to figure out what to tell Mason about the baby. The truth was, I was running. I left a note on the kitchen counter. "Family emergency. Back in a few days. Love. E." It was cowardly and unfair, but I couldn't face him yet. Not when I didn't know if anything he'd said to me was real. My mother took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. "Mija, what happened?" I broke down then, sobbing against her shoulder while she stroked my hair and made soothing sounds. Eventually, when the tears stopped, I told her everything. The arrangement, falling in love, the pregnancy, overhearing Victoria. "And you didn't tell him about the baby?" she asked when I finished. "How could I? What if he only wants to stay married because of the child? What if he feels trapped?" "Elena," my mother cupped my face in her hands. "That man loves you. Anyone with eyes can see it." "But what if it's not enough? Then you'll figure it out. Together, but you can't make decisions for both of you by keeping this secret." I knew she was right, but I was terrified. The pregnancy had changed everything. Before, I could have walked away with a broken heart, but my dignity intact. Now, we'd be connected forever, whether he wanted it or not. My phone rang constantly for the first 2 days. Mason calling, texting, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Elena, please call me back. I'm worried about you. Your mother said there's no family emergency. What's going on? Did I do something wrong? Talk to me, please. I'm flying down there if you don't call me back. On the 3rd day, the calls stopped. I told myself I was relieved, but the silence felt worse than the constant ringing. That's when my grandmother sat me down for what she called a come-to-Jesus talk. Elena Rose Rodriguez, she said in the voice that had terrified me as a child. What exactly do you think you're doing? I needed time to think, abuela. You needed time to run away. You mean? I flinched. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You love this man, yes? Yes, but no buts. You love him. He loves you. And you're carrying his child. The rest is just fear talking. What if he doesn't want the baby? What if he does? What if he's at home right now, worried sick about you, or wondering what he did wrong? But Victoria is a woman from his past who means nothing to his future, unless you let your fear make her mean something. That evening, I finally worked up the courage to listen to Mason's voicemails. The progression from worried to panicked to hurt broke my heart. The last one, left just that morning, was the worst. Elena, I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. I love you, and I thought you loved me too. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. The defeat in his voice was unbearable. I was about to call him when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Elena Rodriguez? The voice was smooth, cultured, and unfamiliar. Yes. This is Derek Crawford, Mason's cousin. I think we need to talk. Oh. Derek Crawford was everything Mason wasn't. Smooth where Mason was genuine, calculating where Mason was passionate. We met at a coffee shop near my parents' house, and I disliked him immediately. You're probably wondering why I'm calling, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. The thought had crossed my mind. I know about your arrangement with my cousin, the fake marriage, the inheritance clause, all of it. My blood chilled. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. You disappeared right around the time you were supposed to have your happily ever after conversation about extending your arrangement. That's quite a coincidence. I said nothing, but my silence was apparently answer enough. Here's what I'm prepared to offer you, Derek continued, pulling out an envelope. $500,000 to disappear permanently. Divorce papers already drawn up, citing abandonment. You file them, take the money. And Mason never has to know you were anything more than what you started as, a paid actress. You're insane. I'm practical. You see, Mason's been distracted lately. His work has suffered. The board is concerned about his decision-making abilities, especially regarding this emotional entanglement he's developed. He loves me. Does he? Or does he love the idea of you? The sweet, uncomplicated baker who made him feel like a hero for saving your family business? Derek leaned forward. You're from different worlds, Miss Rodriguez. Eventually, he'll realize that. This way, you both walk away with something, and you get control of the company. I get what should have been mine from the beginning. I stared at the envelope, my mind racing. $500,000. Enough to expand the bakery, maybe open a second location. Enough to raise my child without ever worrying about money. But it would mean walking away from Mason forever. It would mean letting him believe I'd never loved him at all. I need time to think, I said finally. 24 hours. The offer expires. He left the envelope on the table and walked away, leaving me staring at what felt like a deal with the devil. That night, I called my best friend Sophia, desperate for advice. "Are you completely insane?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "Elena, you're in love with this man, and you're carrying his baby. Money isn't worth giving that up." But what if Derek is right? What if Mason and I are too different? What if he's wrong? What if you and Mason could have something beautiful together? It's not that simple. Sophia. There are things you don't understand. Then help me understand. What aren't you telling me? I almost confessed about the pregnancy then, but something held me back. If I told Sophia, it would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. I don't want to get hurt. Too late for that, isn't it? You're already hurt. The question is whether you're going to let fear keep you from fighting for what you want. But what did I want? I'd started this arrangement looking for money to save my family's business. I'd ended up falling in love with a man who might see me as nothing more than a temporary diversion. And now I was pregnant with his child, facing a choice that would affect 3 lives. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at Derek's envelope and thinking about the life growing inside me. This baby deserved better than parents who were afraid to fight for their relationship. This baby deserved parents who were brave enough to choose love over fear. By morning, I'd made my decision. I arrived at Mason's office building at exactly 9 a.m. Derek's envelope in my purse and my pregnancy test hidden in my jacket pocket. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times on the plane. But when I saw him through his office windows, all my careful words evaporated. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He was standing at his window, staring out at the city, with the expression of a man who'd lost everything that mattered. "Elena." His voice was hoarse with surprise when I knocked on his door. "Hi." We stared at each other across the expanse of his office, and I could see the exact moment he rebuilt his walls, shutting me out. "I wasn't sure you were coming back," he said carefully. "We need to talk, Do we? Because I've been trying to talk to you for 5 days, and you've been ignoring my calls." "I know. I'm sorry. I just needed time to think." "About what? About us? About whether you want to be here?" I could hear the hurt underneath his anger, and it made my chest ache. "Mason, your cousin came to see me yesterday," he said, his voice flat. My blood froze. "Derek?" He told me some interesting things, about offers being made, about envelopes full of money. Derek had played us both, backing me into a corner where Mason would find out about his offer, but not my answer. The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I know what you're going to choose." Mason turned back to the window. The money's better than anything I could offer you, isn't it? You think I want Derek's money? Don't you? He faced me again, his green eyes cold. $500,000 to walk away. That's a hell of a lot more than our original agreement. Is that what you think of me? That I'd sell what we have for money? Wouldn't you? Isn't that what this whole thing has been about from the beginning? His words hit me like physical blows. This was my worst fear realized, that he'd never seen me as anything more than a woman he'd bought for 6 months. You're right, I said quietly. It has always been about money, hasn't it? You bought yourself a wife to meet your grandfather's requirements, and I sold myself to save my family's business. Elena, but somewhere along the way, I made the mistake of thinking it had become something more. I thought you loved me. I do love you. No, you love the idea of me, the simple baker who was grateful for your help, who made you feel generous and noble. I pulled Derek's envelope from my purse and set it on his desk. But you're right. This is about money. It always has been. So you're taking it? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man I'd fallen in love with hiding behind a mask of cold professionalism. The man who'd learned to fold empanadas with my grandmother, who'd brought me coffee in bed, who'd whispered "I love you" against my hair in the dark. No, I said quietly, I'm not taking Derek's money. Hope flashed across his face. Elena, I'm not taking it because I don't need it. Because I have something more valuable than money. I pulled the pregnancy test from my pocket and set it next to the envelope. I have this. Mason stared at the test for a long moment, his face cycling through confusion, shock, and something that might have been joy before settling on carefully controlled blankness. You're pregnant, he said. 12 weeks. And you didn't tell me. I was scared. Of what? Of this. Of you looking at me exactly the way you're looking at me right now. Like I'm a problem to be solved rather than the woman you love. Mason sank into his desk chair, running his hands through his hair. 12 weeks. That means it happened that first night, when we forgot to be careful. I've known for how long? A week. A week. His voice was deadly quiet. You've known for a week, and instead of telling me, you ran away and considered taking money from my cousin to disappear. I never considered taking Derek's money. Didn't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you wanted to see if there was a better offer before you told me about the baby. His words were like poison, seeping into all my insecurities. That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Elena? Because I'm trying to understand how the woman I love could keep something this important from me. The woman you love? Or the woman you feel obligated to love because she's carrying your child? What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means I heard you with Victoria. I heard her talking about marriage being a business transaction for people like you. I heard you agree with her. Mason's face went very still. You were eavesdropping on a private conversation. I was bringing you lunch, and I heard enough to know that nothing between us has changed. I'm still just a convenient arrangement. That's not true, isn't it? How long have you been in contact with Victoria? Elena, how long? Mason? He was quiet for a long moment. She reached out 2 weeks ago, said she was moving back to town, wanted to catch up. And you didn't think to mention it to me? There was nothing to mention. She's part of my past. Is she? Because she seemed pretty confident that she could be part of your future. What did you hear exactly? I repeated the conversation as best I could remember, watching his face grow more and more grim. And based on that, you decided I was looking for a way out of our marriage, weren't you? No, Elena, I wasn't, but clearly you were, or you wouldn't have run the moment things got complicated. We stared at each other across his desk, the pregnancy test and Derek's money sitting between us like the ruins of everything we'd built. So what now? I asked finally. Now? Now I guess we figure out how to co-parent a child when we can't even trust each other enough to have an honest conversation. The dismissal in his voice broke something inside me. This wasn't how I'd imagined telling him about the baby. I'd dreamed of joy and of him sweeping me into his arms, of us facing the future together. Instead, and we were facing each other like enemies. Fine, I said, standing up. My lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements. Elena, wait. But I was already walking away, just like he'd accused me of doing. Because sometimes running was easier than staying to watch everything you'd hoped for crumble to dust. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Mason's lawyer contacted mine with a formal custody proposal that was generous to the point of being insulting. Full financial support for me and the baby, a college fund already established, and a schedule that would give him regular visitation rights while acknowledging that I would be the primary caregiver. It was everything I could have asked for and nothing I actually wanted. What I wanted was for him to call me. What I wanted was for him to show up at my door and fight for us. What I wanted was for him to love me enough to look past my mistakes and see that I was just scared. But Mason Crawford had been raised in a world where everything was negotiated through lawyers and contracts. So why would his child be any different? I was at the bakery, mechanically rolling out pie dough while my mother watched me with worried eyes, when Sophia burst through the front door. Elena Rose Rodriguez, what the hell is wrong with you? Hello to you too. Soph, don't you hello me. Just spent the last hour on the phone with some fancy lawyer asking me about your mental state and your fitness as a mother. My blood froze. What? Apparently, someone's been investigating you. Your finances, your family, your medical history, the whole 9 yards. That's impossible. Mason wouldn't he? Because according to this lawyer, his client has concerns about your ability to provide a stable environment for his child. The rolling pin snapped in my hands. He's challenging me for custody? It sounds like he's building a case. And Elena, I have to ask, is there anything he could find that would hurt you? I thought about my college years, my student loans, the time I'd been arrested at a protest in grad school. Nothing serious, but in the hands of an expensive lawyer. This is about the money, isn't it? I said, the pieces clicking into place. He thinks I was planning to take Derek's offer, so now he doesn't trust me with his child. Elena, you need to call him. Want this out before it gets ugly. But it was already ugly. The man I'd fallen in love with was trying to take my baby away before it was even born. That night, I called the one person who might be able to help me understand what Mason was thinking. Hello? His voice was tired, strained. It's me. Silence. Then, Elena, we need to talk. I think our lawyers can handle. If you try to take my baby away from me, I will fight you with everything I have. Our baby, he corrected quietly. And I'm not trying to take the baby away from you. Then what do you call having me investigated like I'm some kind of criminal? I call it being thorough, making sure I understand the situation completely before I make any decisions. The situation? You mean your child? I mean the woman who was prepared to disappear with my child without telling me she was pregnant. I was never going to take Derek's money. How was I supposed to know that? You've lied to me about everything else. I've never lied to you, You lied by omission. About the pregnancy, about overhearing my conversation with Victoria, about your feelings, about everything. He was right, and we both knew it. I had lied, even if I'd told myself I was just protecting us both. So what happens now? I asked. Now we do what we should have done from the beginning. We be honest with each other. Okay, I'll start. I love you. Mason, I love you so much it terrifies me. And I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to tell you about the baby right away. Elena, I'm not finished. I'm also sorry I ran instead of staying to fight for us. But I'm not sorry for protecting myself when I thought you were looking for a way out. Are you done? Yes. Good. Because it's my turn. His voice was rough with emotion. I love you too. I've loved you since that night we talked until dawn in the kitchen. Maybe before that. And when you disappeared, it felt like someone had torn my heart out. Then why? Because I was hurt and angry and scared. Because the thought of raising a child with someone who didn't trust me enough to tell me I was going to be a father was terrifying. And now? Now I think we're both scared and stupid and in love with each other despite our best efforts to mess it up. I laughed despite myself, tears streaming down my face. Probably. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Do you want this baby? The question caught me off guard. Of course I do. Even though it wasn't planned? Even though it complicates everything? Especially because it wasn't planned. This baby is proof that sometimes the best things in life happen when you're not looking for them. Like falling in love with your fake husband. Exactly like that. We were both quiet for a moment, and I could hear the sound of traffic in the background. He was outside somewhere, probably walking because that's what he did when he needed to think. Mason? Yeah? What about Victoria? He sighed. Victoria is someone I dated in college. Someone I thought I might marry back when I believed love was just compatibility and mutual benefit. When she came back to town, she made it clear she was interested in picking up where we left off. And I told her I was in love with my wife. That whatever we'd had was over. You told her you loved me? I told her you were the best thing that had ever happened to me, and that I'd be damned if I let her or anyone else ruin it. But you heard part of a conversation where I was trying to get her to leave without being cruel about it. You heard me agreeing that marriage used to be just business to me. Not that it still was. I felt like an idiot, a stupid, jealous, insecure idiot who'd nearly thrown away the best thing in her life because she was too afraid to ask for clarification. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry too, for not telling you about Victoria, for having you investigated, for handling this whole thing like a business transaction instead of a relationship. So where does that leave us? I don't know. But, Elena, yeah? I want to figure it out. Together, if you're willing to try, I'm willing. Good. Because I have a proposal for you. My heart stopped. What kind of proposal? The kind where I ask you to marry me for real this time. Where I promise to love you and trust you and fight for us when things get hard. Where I ask you to build a life with me. Not because of a contract or a baby, but because we're better together than we are apart. I couldn't breathe. Mason, I know I'm doing this all wrong. I should be there, on my knee, with a ring. But I couldn't wait another second to ask you. And I needed you to know that this has nothing to do with the baby, and everything to do with the fact that I can't imagine my life without you in it. Yes, I whispered. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. Even though I'm an arrogant, controlling bastard who had you investigated, even though I'm a coward who ran away instead of trusting you. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The worst, I agreed, laughing through my tears. Elena? Yeah? I'm coming to get you. Tonight. I'll drive all night if I have to, but I need to see you. Okay. And Elena? Yeah? I love you. All of you. The scared parts and the brave parts and everything in between. I love you too. Mason. Come home. I'm already on my way. Mason arrived at sunrise. Just as I was getting ready to open the bakery, I saw his car pull up through the front window and ran outside in my pajamas and apron, not caring who saw. He caught me in his arms and spun me around, and for a moment, it felt like a movie, the kind with happy endings and swelling music and perfect kisses in the golden morning light. You're here, I said against his lips. I'm here. And Elena? Yeah? I brought backup. That's when I noticed the woman getting out of the passenger seat. Tall, elegant, with Mason's green eyes and a warm smile. Elena, this is my mother, Catherine Crawford. Mom, this is Elena, the woman I love. Catherine hugged me like I was already family. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Dear, Mason's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope. Well, mostly, she said, with a wink that made me like her immediately. Though he did mention something about you being pregnant with my grandchild and not telling him for a week. Mom, Mason warned. What? I'm allowed to be excited about becoming a grandmother. And Elena, dear, that was very silly of you. I know. Good. Long as you know. Now, Mason tells me you make the most incredible empanadas. I don't suppose you'd be willing to teach me the recipe. And just like that, I knew everything was going to be okay. We were remarried 3 months later, when I was showing enough that there was no hiding my pregnancy from the wedding photos. This time, we wrote our own vows. And when Mason promised to love me through all the fears and doubts and moments of stupidity that were sure to come, I believed him. The ceremony was at the bakery, surrounded by mismatched tables and the smell of fresh bread and all the people who'd loved us through our mistakes. My family, his mother, even Derek Crawford, who'd apologized for his interference and seemed genuinely happy for us. Do you, Elena Rodriguez Crawford, Take Mason Crawford to be your husband, to love and cherish through all the adventures ahead? I do. And this time, I meant it with every cell of my being. Do you, Mason Crawford, take Elena Rodriguez Crawford to be your wife, to love and support through all the challenges and joys to come? I do. His voice was steady, sure, full of a love that no longer scared me. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. And the kiss was different this time, deeper, more certain, full of promise and possibility. When we broke apart, Mason rested his forehead against mine. Third time's the charm, he whispered. This is only the second time. The first time was just practice. This is the one that counts. Our daughter, Isabella Rose Crawford, was born on a snowy February morning, screaming her outrage at the world with impressive volume for someone who weighed less than 7 pounds. Mason cried when the doctor placed her in his arms, and I fell in love with him all over again, watching him fall in love with her. She's perfect, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Just like her daddy, I said, and he looked at me with so much love I thought my heart might burst. Just like her mama. Isabella had my dark hair and Mason's green eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had both of us wrapped completely around her tiny fingers. Chum. 1 year later, I was in the kitchen of our house, not Mason's sterile penthouse, but a real home with a yard and rooms that actually looked lived in, making dinner while Isabella played in her high chair and Mason worked at the kitchen island. It was the kind of ordinary, domestic scene I'd never dared to dream of during those first 6 months of our arrangement. Mason coming home at reasonable hours, Isabella babbling nonsense while she threw Cheerios on the floor, me cooking dinner with flour in my hair, and love overflowing from every corner of our chaotic, beautiful life. Elena, Mason said, looking up from his laptop. I got an interesting call today. Yeah? From a publisher. And apparently, someone forwarded them the cookbook proposal you've been working on. I froze, wooden spoon halfway to my mouth. What cookbook proposal? The one your mother may or may not have sent them without telling you. She didn't. She did. Oh. And they want to meet with you about a 3-book deal. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. A what? Traditional family recipes, stories about food and memory, the works. They love your voice, your perspective. They want to make you a star. Elena. But I have Isabella, and the bakery, and you're brilliant and talented, and you deserve to have everything you've ever dreamed of. I sank into the chair beside him, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can do it all. You won't be doing it all alone. You'll have me, and my mother, and your family. We'll figure it out together. 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 Always together. So, that night, after Isabella was asleep and we were curled up on the couch that had witnessed so many important conversations, I asked him the question that had been nagging at me. Do you ever regret it? The way we started? Which part? The fake marriage or the falling in love despite our best efforts? All of it. The mess, the drama, the way we almost threw it all away. Mason was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. You want to know the truth? Always. I think we needed the mess. I think if we'd met at a coffee shop or a party, we would have been too careful with each other, too worried about saying the wrong thing or moving too fast. You think the arrangement gave us permission to be ourselves? I think the arrangement forced us to be ourselves. We couldn't hide behind dating games or social expectations. We were stuck together, for better or worse, and eventually the walls had to come down. Even the lying and the running away and the general stupidity? Especially that. Because we learned that we could screw up spectacularly and still choose each other. We learned that love isn't just the easy moments, it's fighting for each other when things get hard. I tilted my head up to look at him. So, you don't regret any of it? I regret that I hurt you. I regret that we wasted time being scared, but I don't regret anything that led us here. Even Derek's interference? Even Derek's interference. Because it forced us to be honest about what we really wanted. And what do we really want? This, he said, gesturing around our living room with its baby toys and family photos and evidence of a life built together. A real marriage, real love, real partnership, the kind that lasts. Think we'll make it to forever? Elena Crawford, he said, using my married name the way he did when he was being particularly serious. I think we'll make it to infinity and beyond. That's a Toy Story reference. I'm practicing for when Isabella's older. God, you're going to be such a dad. The best dad, just like you're going to be the best mom and the best cookbook author and the best everything. You have a lot of faith in me. I have all the faith in the world in you, just like you had faith in me when I didn't deserve it. Later, when we were lying in bed and Mason was already asleep beside me, I thought about the strange, circuitous path that had led us here. 6 months that were supposed to be temporary had turned into a lifetime commitment. A business arrangement had become the love story of my dreams. And the baby sleeping in the nursery down the hall, the baby who'd scared us both into running from each other, had turned out to be the missing piece that made our family complete. I drifted off to sleep thinking about beginnings and endings, about the difference between settling and choosing, about the courage it takes to love someone enough to fight for them even when they've given you every reason to walk away. 2 years later, I was signing copies of my first cookbook at a bookstore in downtown Chicago when I looked up to see a familiar face in line. Victoria Hastings, looking exactly as polished and perfect as she had that day I'd overheard her conversation with Mason. "Congratulations," she said when she reached the front of the line. "I heard the book is doing wonderfully." "Thank you." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "I also heard about the new baby. A son this time?" "James. He's 3 months old." "How lovely." Mason always said he wanted a big family. I looked at her more closely, trying to read her expression. There was something almost sad in her eyes, a kind of resignation that made me feel sorry for her when despite everything. "Victoria," I said carefully, "why are you here?" I wanted to apologize for what I said that day in Mason's office, for the way I tried to interfere in your marriage. It was petty and jealous and wrong. You were in love with him. I thought I was, but I realized later that I was in love with the idea of him. The status, the security, the life he could provide. I wasn't in love with who he actually was. And you think I am? I know you are. I've seen the way he looks at you. Elena, he never looked at me like that. He never looked at anyone like that. She paused, seeming to gather her courage. I'm getting married next month to someone who looks at me the way Mason looks at you, and I wanted to thank you. Thank me for showing me the difference between settling and choosing love, for proving that it's possible to have both passion and partnership. I signed her book, and as she walked away, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. Victoria wasn't the villain in our story. She was just someone who'd taken longer to learn the lessons Mason and I had figured out together. That night, I told Mason about the encounter while we sat in our nursery, taking turns feeding James while Isabella played quietly with her books. How did that feel? He asked. Seeing her again? Surprisingly okay. She apologized, actually. Good. She should have. Mason? Yeah? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd married her instead? If you'd chosen the safe, expected path? He was quiet for a moment, shifting James to his shoulder for burping. Honestly, I think I would have been miserable. Successful, maybe, but miserable. Why? Because I would have been living someone else's idea of what my life should look like instead of figuring out what I actually wanted. And what do you actually want? This, he said, just like he had 2 years ago in our old living room. Chaos and sleepless nights and toddler tantrums and cookbook deadlines and a wife who challenges me to be better than I thought I could be. Even when that wife is covered in baby spit up and hasn't washed her hair in 3 days? Especially then. Isabella chose that moment to toddle over and climb into my lap, her green eyes, so much like her father's, bright with mischief. Mama, story, she demanded. What kind of story, baby girl? Princess story. Once upon a time, I began, settling her against my chest while Mason rocked James. There was a princess who made the best cookies in all the land. Like Mama, just like Mama. And one day, a prince came to her bakery with a very strange request. I told her our story, edited for a 2-year-old audience, about the princess who helped the prince and fell in love along the way, about how they had to be very brave and learn to trust each other before they could live happily ever after. More story, Isabella demanded when I finished. That's the whole story, sweetheart. No, she said, with the certainty only a toddler could possess. More story comes next. She was right, of course, and our story wasn't over. It was still being written. One ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. Mason caught my eye over her head and smiled, the same smile that had made me fall in love with him in a kitchen full of the scent of cookies and possibility. What comes next, Mama? Isabella asked sleepily. I looked around our nursery, at my husband feeding our son, at our daughter falling asleep in my arms, at the life we'd built from the ashes of a fake marriage and 1,000 small acts of courage. Everything, I told her. Everything beautiful comes next. And as I rocked my children to sleep, while the man I loved hummed softly in the chair beside me, I knew it was true. We'd started with a contract, built something real through trial and error and forgiveness. And now we had forever stretching out ahead of us like a promise. Sometimes the best love stories begin with the worst ideas, and sometimes the courage to stay is more important than the wisdom to run. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, fake becomes real, and real becomes everything you never knew you needed. Our 6 months had become a lifetime, and our lifetime was just beginning.